Call the meeting of the Waco City Council on January 16th, 2024 to order at 3:02 p.m. Please join me for a moment of silence. And also, as we do so, please keep in mind the family of Congresswoman and Waco native Eddie Bernice Johnson, who recently passed away. Keep her family in your prayers. Join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item or during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation, regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you're here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium to provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. We do have a couple of cards for the work session tonight. I'll call those up in a moment. When called to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. Each speaker must limit comments to 3 minutes. If you're speaking on behalf of a group of 10 or more individuals present, please have those persons stand up at the beginning of your comments, and you'll be given 10 minutes to address the council. Please note that if you stand in support of a person getting 10 minutes, you're forfeiting your right to speak on that item. For any person addressing the council through the use of a translator, the speaking time will be doubled. While the public discourse is very important to council, we have to maintain order in meetings so that all persons may be heard and city business may be conducted. So, if directed by me, the Sergeant of Arms will remove from council meeting any person who, while addressing the council or attending the council meeting, makes personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, becomes boisterous, or makes unauthorized remarks from audience, claps hands, stomps feet, whistles, yells, or makes similar demonstrations. So the first card I have today is Diane Elmendorf, and on deck we'll have Jenna Mayhem. I probably mispronounced that. But Miss Elmendorf, if you want to take the podium, that'd be fine.
Hi, my name is Diane Elmendorf. I'm a resident of the Chalk Bluff neighborhood. I live on Brazos Point Drive. We became aware in June, actually we became aware in October, that of the purchase of properties in the Chalk Bluff neighborhood for the stated purpose of building a water treatment plant. This is within a quarter mile of my home. I do have riverfront property. We're in the community, we're alarmed. We haven't been given a lot of information about this. I called the city's office in October on the 7th, and I called 3 different departments, and I never got any returns from those phone calls. I called our local county commissioner. They told me I must be confused. Then within 15 minutes, they called back and said, oh yeah, we do see this. We're going to have to find out what's going on. We're aware of the issues that went on with the purchase and building of the Lorena plant. And the studies that have come out of that is that the people felt politically disenfranchised and underrepresented. That's what's happening here. We're not in the city. We're not an area that's slated for annexation. Yet we're looking at getting a treatment plant for the sewage from China Springs. That doesn't make a lot of sense to our neighborhood. I appreciate your just knowing that we have concerns. You people are not voted by us. We have no legitimate advocates in this process. And we feel disenfranchised and overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Gina Nahum. I said it better that time, no? No. Sorry.
Yeah, it's Vaughn. It's like Vaughn with an M. It's not Mayhem.
that.
I guess you're anticipating something here?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, possibly.
At any rate, that is how we feel. I'm speaking on the same exact issue in the resolution that you guys passed in June, which I got a little text, screenshot of the resolution in November. And I don't have riverfront property, but I am looking at that field out every window of my home. I have lived there for 30 years. My husband and I are retired. He had a restaurant here that he opened. It was the first restaurant downtown. It was Buzzard Billy's. I was a trial attorney, graduated Baylor, and we decided to stay in this lovely neighborhood. We don't have any sewer services, as Diane mentioned. We don't have any services whatsoever. When I have called people, I was fortunate enough to work with TSTC over the airport for many years when Bush was flying in. Developed some great contacts here at the city and contacted some of them and said, what in the world is going on? And none of them knew it. No one knew. And so what we are assuming is that you have had a long-term issue with trying to get enough services to keep issuing more and more permits to these builders who are coming in and building 6 houses per acre. And this way you get the Waco residents to foot the bill for the infrastructure for these developers now, and put it out over here in this other area that won't even bother those people. And it doesn't seem right to have the Waco spend money that way. It seems like we would learn from other larger cities and spend more decidedly in favor of the residents that are here and the community that we've built. I cannot imagine the wastewater facility that you guys are saying it's modeled after, which of course you haven't been honest with us about anything so far. Probably because there's lack of discourse and there's not a plan in place. But what you're saying you're modeling it after is the Bullhide Creek plant. So you gave us tours of that last week, and we went over there, and lo and behold, it only discharges, of course, you talk about it in gallons per day, but gallons per year is close to 1 billion gallons of treated sewage going into Lake Brazos. We're in a drought. Where do you think that goes? That sits right on the shores of Buzzard Billy's or Brazos, whatever, Foster's, Baylor, Slow Rise, our beautiful parks that are what we are known for. I mean, heavens to Betsy, our sign says Brazos on the rise. Rising with what? What are you feeding it? It's going to just be, and who's going to come for the triathlon or for Tri-Waco? I mean, that's just, it doesn't make sense. I don't feel like we have to stop issuing permits and we have to stop building, but there's something better. We need to think about the billions we have put into this river and not just send more and more and more billions of sludge to go sit on the riverbanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will say, no one has intentionally been misleading in this process. And to note, because we have a couple of other speakers that are coming up, we are having a work session on this item, so hopefully there will be that discourse, and there will be an abundance of information that gets presented publicly to this council as well as the public that we can engage in dialogue, and there won't be guessing on misinformation or what's going on out there.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Next we have Nancy Andre. And on deck, Nancy Lacey. Two Nancys.
Hi, my name is Nancy Andre. I live a couple doors down. I live on Buster Chatham Road, and directly across the street from where the water treatment plant is going to be put in. I could say that all of our neighbors were shocked when they found out about it because none of us were consulted or asked or informed about what was going in. And what I understand is that this property, they looked for property for 2 or 3 years. They looked on both sides of the river, but they chose the opposite side of the river. The purpose is to help the capacity in China Spring in Bosqueville, but they're going under the river and bringing it to our side, Chalk Bluff side, Buster Chatham Road, where we all have septic tanks. We don't need a water treatment plant in our backyard. And they're bringing that across, and we know, because we watched this land, this property that they bought, we watched this land was only in the neighborhood of $3,400 an acre, right in the middle of COVID, and we feel like they overpaid tremendously for this piece of property. They paid $4 million for 150 acres for this site, which is much more property than was needed. We went out we had a wonderful tour at Bullhide Creek, and they only have 88 acres, and that's plenty for them to, it was more than enough for them to expand and to put up berms and trees and things to make it as palatable to their neighbors as they could. But so I want to say real quickly that people have said to us, this is done, you just got to deal with it and see what you can do to help protect and see how involved you can get to protect yourself, make sure there's lighting and berms and it's quiet and the odor's down. But I disagree with that because I think there's more time. There's a 3-year, the city is bound by a 3-year lease with the family who sold it. They can't do anything. There's plenty of time there now to back this up. Now that they know, now that there's awareness that all of us are so upset and the devastating effect it's going to have on us, which nobody looked into in the beginning. There's time to go about and look for more property that's not a riverfront property on the Brazos River. And our river goes up and down. It used to be static, but now the Brazos River Authority lets water up that comes to up and down. And there are times, I have a picture, I couldn't find it this afternoon, where am I done?
If you could just wrap up your comments, yeah.
17 feet and 19 feet up into my backyard, washing away boathouses. It does flood. It does flood out there. It is serious. But nobody came and asked us or talked to us about it. Just one little thing. In the ordinance of codes, in the Muni Code, there is on-site sewage facilities in consideration of the aquifer recharge zone, permeable soil conditions, hydrogeologic character, and inherent water quality risk associated with on-site sewage facilities are now prohibited in the Brazos River corridor. I have just a little bit more that I couldn't print off.
If you could just, I'm sorry, ma'am, I think
Am I
your time is
done?
off. Yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate you.
I think I got my point across.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Nancy Lacey, and after that, we have Mark Pede. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Nancy Lacey. I am a citizen of Waco, Texas. I reside at 1102 Earl Steinbeck Road. I've been working with my animals for the past 4 days getting over this ice storm. Just heard about all this. Don't really know much about what's going on, but just the initial thought of having a water treatment plant across in our neighbor's front yard, in our backyard, is a little bit alarming. So before our city government goes and defiles such a treasure as our Brazos River, I feel like that as a taxpayer and a citizen of the city, we should know all the facts before proceeding. Once the river is contaminated with this waste, it will be too costly and virtually impossible to clean. So you, as our city council representatives to us, should do your very best to make sure that this project will not contaminate our waterway, the Brazos River. We only get one chance to do this right. This is it. You need to do the right thing. Stop this project until we know for sure that our water will not be contaminated with waste. Thanks.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Lacy. And I can tell everybody here, I guarantee you, we're going to have a robust discussion filled with information, and we're not going to put the waters of the Brazos River at risk. Next, we have Mark.
Hello, I'm Mark Blandpeed. I live at 1848 Beverly Cox Drive. It's the property right next to where this proposed plant would be built. Our house is up on Beverly Cox Drive, but the property goes down to the river right next to that spot. As I understand it, the amount of property needed for the sewage treatment plant itself is somewhere on the order of 5 to 15 acres. I've heard numbers. I don't know that is a fact. But yet the city chose to purchase for $4.5 million 150-ish acres. And then I'm hearing that the plan is to have a undisclosed builder or developer put in 800 or so homes on this property at high density. This is a community. Chalk Bluff is a very old community. The house I live in was built in 1917 by the McCarroll family. And this community is largely comprised of very large home sites. I don't mean the homes are large, I mean the land is large. Not 6 homes per acre, but more like 6 acres per home. And for the plan, it just says, I think the community will suffer more from the density of population that lives down there than they will from the plant itself. Both are bad. Buster Chatham Road is not that great a road right now for that. And yes, it could be improved, et cetera, but the community just, it doesn't fit this community. Putting in a high density subdivision down there does not fit this community, and it feels like an invasion to the neighbors. So I'm wanting to know, let's see. Also, why was the land not purchased on the Bosqueville side? That was covered by someone previous. Instead of going to the extra expense to go underneath the river at cost to the taxpayers, or just taking the pipe that you've already got going down to the Waco plant and go alongside it. I don't understand why that's not feasible, as opposed to going upstream of Waco and dumping the effluent there. So since if all the acreage is not needed for the plant, I would like to know what are the plans for the rest of the land, and I would like some more transparency on that subject. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I think we'll probably be getting to some information in a presentation soon. Is there anyone else here to speak on a work session item? If not, I'll turn it over to Bradley Ford for a report from the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Welcome to the meeting today. I'm going to go a little out of sequence, given that we had a few speakers in the work session interested in one of the work sessions. I'm going to reorder and go ahead and cover work session 006, the discussion of a new wastewater treatment plant on Buster Chatham Road, out of respect for our residents that are here. Lisa, if you'll come on up, I'm going to give a short intro. In April of 2019, the council may recall that we authorized HDR to perform a study with the purpose of identifying the improvements necessary to accommodate development in the China Spring area, including the potential capacity and location for a satellite wastewater treatment plant. Shortly after, we held a public meeting in September of 2019 at the China Spring ISD Administration Building to discuss the need for a future wastewater treatment plant in the area. And shortly after, staff began searching for a suitable property for that plant and has done so for the last couple of years, as highlighted by at least one of the speakers earlier. I've asked Lisa Tyre, our Director of Utilities, to join us today to give a presentation of the history of the project, where we're at today, as well as where we're going, because I think there's some important context to provide to the community and certainly those that are affected nearby. And not really wanting to steal Lisa's thunder, there are a couple of points that I'm going to cover real quickly for the council. First, we're very early in this process. We do not anticipate needing a plant online until 2034, which is 10 years from now. Again, we do not anticipate needing a wastewater treatment plant in that area for 10 years. There will be many opportunities for the city to work with neighbors to alleviate concerns, many of those that have been raised here, as well as incorporate those concerns into agreements that are approved by the council with property owners that will ensure the plant's design and operations are done in a manner that's as friendly to neighbors as possible. Second, the type of plant we plan to construct, and Lisa will go over this a little bit more, is like the Bullhide plant that some residents have made their way out to see. And one of the most important elements to know about Bullhide is that, and this plant, is that the more odorous solids that are produced in the process will be hauled to the central plant for their processing. And if you've ever been to Bullhide and Central Plant, you know there's a distinct difference in the odor that comes from those facilities. One, due to their size. Central Plant is 20 times larger, but it also processes solids, and that is where much of the odor generates. So this plant we're considering and discussing today, not going to process solids at that location. Third, we've heard some concerns raised about annexation as well as development, as the last speaker highlighted. Just a kind of a primer on that topic. Annexation of surrounding properties is not needed or planned by the city. The property that we have acquired is adjacent to the city limits. There's no interest or desire to annex any other property nearby, and actually due to recent changes in state law, annexation of property must be voluntary or by the vote of the people being annexed. So the only way the city of Waco is going to annex in that area is by the request of the property owners. We're not seeking that, nor do we plan to call for an election of any type for annexation. Any concerns about the project requiring, enabling, or encouraging the city's annexation of private property hopefully will end today, as it's just not going to happen. In regards to development of the acreage that would surround the plant, the city is certainly, and I think Lisa's going to cover this in her comments, we did buy a piece of property that's much larger than we actually need, because we found at Bullhide that buffer has been helpful for odor, for visibility, for noise, for light. So we did intentionally go out and buy a larger piece of property. And we intend not to develop it in any way. Any rumors of development on that property are not accurate. And the good thing about walking this process now is that can be documented in agreements with neighbors for the long haul. So with that, I'm going to let Lisa take it from here. She's got an informative presentation. And definitely, Lisa, thank you for putting this together over the weekend for me. And I hope that it's of benefit to our speakers that came to join us today.
Mayor, Council, good afternoon. I'm Lisa Tyre. I'm the Director of Water Utility Services, and I'm here to talk about a future North Brazos wastewater treatment plant. Sorry. All the stuff I need is down at this end. So a site for a wastewater treatment plant. We did a study for the China Springs Sewer Basin, and it was completed in 2019. Growth was exceeding capacity of the sewer lines. We had a need to preserve capacity in the East Bank Interceptor. That's that big sewer line that runs along MLK. If we had to replace that, we would shut MLK down until such time as we could get a line in there. It would be tremendously costly. Those of you who were on council at the time can remember MLK and Herring, where we had just a minor separation in the sewer line, and it took us months and months and months. I think it was about a 2.5-year project. The soil is so, it's kind of like quicksand because it's under the influence of the Brazos River itself. And so we would see workers drop a hammer and a hammer would disappear. It's that bad to deal with. So it becomes a very expensive project at that point. We have the opportunity to reclaim or use the discharge that would go into the Brazos River, whether that is through a future need for water, for drinking water, or whether that's for someone who has fields adjacent to us to be able to reuse that water. So that's always a good opportunity there for water to be, reused, whether it's on a hayfield or trees or whatever is surrounding that property. Determining a site for a wastewater treatment plant allows us time to properly prepare and plan. So one of the things with the reason for wanting the property so far in advance out in that China Springs area to handle the waste from that area is that we knew that the area was continuing to grow. There were new wastewater lines being put in, but we needed a location, an area that we knew that waste would need to end up at. Otherwise, kind of like trying to put a rubber band on a little girl's hair, that hair is a bunch of strands going all over, but we needed a place where we'd say everything's going here because now we need to get it to the wastewater treatment plant. Otherwise, we're just putting lines in and we're going to have to redo that work at some point in the future. A public meeting was held at China Spring ISD Administration Building on September 5th, 2019 to discuss the need for a future wastewater treatment plant for that area. And so we began looking for property in 2020. So the China Springs area that we currently serve is about 4,100 acres. We are expecting to have to serve another 7,000 acres of land, and there is always that potential that at some point it would expand to an additional 20,000 acres of property that could be brought into a wastewater treatment plant. So when we go out to look at property, there are things that we consider. The topography, if it's near a waterway, we need for it to be near a waterway. The size of the property, roadway access, if there's electricity, impact to surrounding properties, we do look at that. Prevailing winds, we don't want the winds to blow straight into somebody's house or subdivision. Screening or the ability to screen, we want a lot of property so that we're able to plant trees, plant shrubs, build a berm, whatever it takes to try and screen it from the road, so it's not very visible. And then there are permit implications that we also investigate. So the process for site selection, we determined the optimal area for a wastewater plant. We reviewed properties that were currently for sale, and we didn't do this once, we did this 3 or 4 times. Even right before this purchase, we went back out and we looked, is there anything else for sale out there that we can look at that might work for this site, for what we need? And there just wasn't. We made soft inquiries to people. The first soft inquiry we made, I believe, was in the year 2021. So we made multiple soft inquiries to people, and we only ever had one owner express interest. We evaluated TCEQ permit implications as part of this. So property owners 1 mile from where the effluent will discharge, and you measure this discharge from the middle of the Brazos River all the way downstream. those people will have standing. And so properties adjacent to that will have standing. So that was one of the things we look at. We look at how many people will have standing. So the property that was available for purchase was the Buster Chatham Road property. And this is a big aerial view. You can see the airport is over here. You can see where this property is. You can see that Waco city limits comes up the river on both sides through past that property, as a matter of fact. This is a closer look. You can see that there is a piece of the property that is in a 100-year floodplain, but the rest of it is not. And this green is the 500-year floodplain. So this property misses even the 500-year floodplain and just has that one piece that's in the 100-year floodplain. Again, you can see the dotted line is the city limits. So we took a picture of Bullhide and we superimposed it onto this property just so you could see how small the plant is compared to the rest of that property. So the process for treating out at Bullhide and what we would do at this property based on the Bullhide treatment process is that we would have a gravity main to a place on the other side of the river where we would then have a force main that would go under the river. And I know that always sounds alarming, but remember, we're going to do a pipe in a pipe. So it's not just one pipe, we're going to encase that pipe in another pipe so that if we ever had any type of leak on that, we'd be able to pull the one pipe out and put another pipe in. So it would go under the Brazos River. When the wastewater would get to the plant, we would screen it for trash. So wastewater, when it comes in, a lot of times we can find bricks, we can find paper bags, bottles, sheets, towels, sometimes animals. It's amazing what comes through the wastewater pipes. So we're going to screen all that out. At Bullhide, it goes into a regular sized trash can with a trash bag. Every so often when that fills up, they tie it off and they put it in a pickup truck to take it to the central plant. And from there, it goes into the landfill. They will also do grit removal, which is a lot of sand and rock, little fine pieces that they want to get out of the process too. And then the wastewater enters into the biological nutrient removal, which this is our microbes that go in there and do their thing, the bugs that will eat up some of the waste, and we can kind of start consolidating it. From there, it's going to go into what they call the final clarifier. The final clarifier is going to separate those solids and the liquids, and it's going to send the solids to dewatering, which then they will be sent to the central plant. The water that comes out of that dewatering goes all the way back to the beginning of the plant and goes back through that whole process. From there, the water portion of it goes from the final clarifier to disc filters. This again is another filter that screens out any other particles that may not have gotten picked up for whatever reasons and sends the particles back through the plant process. And then the water goes to UV disinfection, which is disinfection without any chemicals. And then from there, at Bullhide, it goes to what we call a finishing process, which is, it is a wetlands, but it's not a wetlands in the terms of what you would think of Lake Waco wetlands. And from there, it goes through that process, and then it gets discharged into Bullhide Creek. We discharge between 35 and 40 million gallons a month. So it is a lot of discharge. It does keep Bullhide Creek flowing, I would say. How does this differ from Central Plant? Central Plant is an industrial plant. It's the way I like to think about it. You're going to have your septic haulers who bring all their septic there. If you have, if some of the larger industrial plants need to dispose of something, they're going to come to Central. That doesn't go down their sewer system. They're going to take that to Central. So we do a lot of one-off or even once a week hauling of different types of industrial waste. From there, we also have the dryer, which then dries the sludge, and we make it into pellets, which we then sell to the local farmers for soil amendment. It's not fertilizer, it is just a soil amendment, but it does have nutrients in it that's good for plants. That's how the two plants really are very different. Also, the plants were built years apart. So Bullhide has a lot more recent technology that was not available when Central Plant was built. So night and day. And the reason why we say we believe this will be the method used for this next plant is we don't know what new technological advances may come about that may change what this is. Remember, this is 10 years in the future. We don't know what this plant's going to really look like. So what I was going to show you next, if I can't see down there, Michelle, you may have to help me out on this. I may not, oh, there it goes, the Bullhide. This is a video Bullhide. You can see it's a beautiful piece of property. We own on both sides of this. So Bullhide plant is closer to 200 acres. It's actually bigger than this piece of property. We own on the other side of the river where somebody leases part of the property to run cattle. On the other side, you can see part of the hayfield right there in the background. We have a hayfield that we lease to another farmer who has a hay out there. These are just different processors. This is the clarifier. And in one corner, in this corner is where the UV occurs. And if you look in the back, you can see our wetlands is back here all the way. And then we discharge off over here. It's a gorgeous piece of property. It's beautiful in the spring. It's beautiful most of the time of the year. But we do own quite a bit of property right there. So we did do a two tours out at Bullhide, and there were some questions that came up. So we really did put some of those questions in this presentation so that we could answer them. One of them, City Manager Ford has already answered, which is no, we don't intend to annex anybody's property out there other than our own. How will we control any odor? We'll employ the latest technology for odor control. One of the latest things that we have was that we put in at Transfer Lift Station. We spent $2 million on an biological odor control out there. When you're standing there, you can smell nothing at that Transfer Lift Station. When that biological odor goes off, when that system goes off, you can definitely smell something. But this is such a, this was the latest thing when we were putting in Transfer Lift Station, which is right on the river. And we didn't want to, and the Baylor's Tennis Center is right next door. And we just didn't want there to be odor for anybody who might develop the property across the river from us. So we spent the extra money to make sure that we had the latest in odor control. And how will we light the property? The city will utilize downcast lighting to reduce light pollution. That's a big concern of ours. And we also want to utilize smart lighting to limit the amount of total lights, but also one that the lights are brightened when somebody's near, when they see the movement, and then dim back down. And is there a way to limit any noise? We'll utilize whatever the latest technology is in sound reduction. It is allowed when the aerators, when the compressors come on for the aerators, and we'll put baffle walls definitely around there, but there may be even something better than that. We just haven't explored that yet. How many trucks will there be there daily? Bullhide Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant has 2 operators with their pickups there daily, and approximately 3 times a week a haul truck will take solid waste to the Central Wastewater Treatment Plant. Occasionally supplies will be delivered. I believe the day that the morning tour was there, we had the fuel truck there fueling the generator. So there'll be those one-off things to expect. But we would expect a similar amount of traffic at the North Brazos plant. And how will the city screen the plant from the public? We may use a berm around the plant. We can plant screening vegetation, bushes and trees along the fence line of the property. And The city may continue to lease, as we do at the Bullhide wastewater treatment property, for hay or other crop production. We really are not looking to change the look of the property other than to screen it from what people can see now, other than there'll be a wastewater treatment plant at the back of the property. So this is a guesstimate, and I really want to stress that. These are dates that we threw out there based on some projection. So we're thinking an engineering study, we'll probably won't even start that till July of '29. And we will invite the public to participate at that point in time to hear what that study's about and for the engineers to address their concerns as part of that study. And then we'll start our TCEQ permitting process, which will also have a public participation element in it, because they will be contacted if they have standing by TCEQ, and they can also comment whether they have standing or not, but they will be directly contacted by TCEQ if they have standing. And then during the design process, again, we would have public meetings to talk about what their concerns are that we haven't addressed already. Hopefully, we've already addressed most of those, but what we haven't addressed, and then certainly, even though we didn't put it in here, when we begin construction, we will want another public meeting with them to let them know who to contact if they do have a problem during construction, what to expect during construction, because construction to me will be the time that it will be the most impactful to the people who live out in that area. And then you just have us showing that we would go into operation sometime in June. Now, this is also very speculative. If China Springs stops growing, maybe we're 15 years out from a plant out in that area. If it expedites, we might be 8 years from a plant out in the area. But as I was trying to, during the tours, let the residents know, we're not in a rush either. We're not looking to want to spend the kind of money that a plant takes just to put a plant somewhere. You know, the longer we can draw this out, the better. And we currently have the project in China Springs that is called the Flat Rock Road Interceptor Project going on, which will give us some additional capacity, and that's the project that we think gives us this additional 10 years. But we won't know till that project is complete, and we can do some evaluation once it's been complete and in use for a while for us to evaluate what the impacts of that project really did. And that is all that I have for you.
Lisa, any questions for Lisa?
I don't have any questions, but I'll make a few comments here. I know that there's been rapid growth, as City Manager Ford said, rapid growth in the northwest part of our city. That was the slide you had on the red and the green and the blue, you know, what, 8,000 acres altogether? Or 20,000. We're thinking far enough ahead. This is a fast-growing area of the city, and we've got to respond with capacity issues. And that's not only roads, which is always very visible, but it's also public safety and this kind of infrastructure, underground water, wastewater, that sort of thing. I think we're staying ahead of it, you know, and I think that's a hallmark of this council. We plan, a lot of our plans are not for this year, next year, but they're for 20 years out, 30 years out, 40 years out, because we see where the city's growing and a lot of great things happening in the city. So I applaud the 10 years ahead planning on this and kind of getting this wastewater project lined up. And I like your comments on, you can't just put one anywhere. It's got to be, the hydrology has to be right, the topography has to be right, the geology has to be right, so you can't just put them anywhere. And again, we're way ahead of this thing, but if it's anything like the Bullhide plant is kind of what we're thinking about, and I think in 10 years ago, or maybe 12, 13 years ago when we built that thing.
12 years ago is when we did Bullhide.
We were using cutting edge technology there. I've been out there a couple of times with the bacteria and the aerobics and the filtration. It's a pretty, it was then a state of the art facility on a pretty small footprint too. I was amazed by it, and the pictures show that. And I would think 10 years from now, or 8, however soon that is, when you get cranked up on this one, that, as you alluded to, the technology will be even more sophisticated, and I think with even more acceptable infrastructure. I like the fact that we bought more acreage than we needed, just for the buffer and the screening and the green space, and to kind of address the gentleman who was concerned about the development. That's not in anybody's mind to be developing this. I like the idea if this were to happen, to keep it looking very much like that Bullhide Creek one, where it's got a very pastoral kind of a nature to it as it exists today. The most important thing I want to say here is just, and the important item here is the running of a very public process. And I think we're trying to do that. Again, this is not happening next month. It's not happening next year. It's quite a ways out, but we want to make sure everybody's aware of what we're faced with from capacity issues there, and what we've kind of got in mind for this long-term project. Just a couple questions I've got. One thing, when I went out to the Bullhide Creek, one of the interesting facts was the percentage of liquid versus solid, and I think is it 97?
Yeah, most wastewater is almost all water.
Yeah, it's 97%. 97%, 3%. So and this will be the solids would be hauled off too, which when you talk about the central plant, for those viewers at home that don't know what the central plant is, that's the one that's kind of downstream where all this other stuff goes on about the solid waste and how we treat that and how we ultimately make pellets out of it. This would not be, this is more of like a little satellite deal that does the kind of a local wastewater treatment, and then the solid waste is hauled off twice daily, I guess. One of the things that Ms. Lacy brought up that I think is going to probably be paramount to this whole deal is just getting everybody comfortable over the course of the next 10 years with the contamination issues, and just because I think that one weighs heavy on everybody too, because points were made about, Brazos is kind of the.
Yeah, so the rules for wastewater and for discharge is actually stricter than what you drink, than your drinking water, because they're concerned about the aquatic life and making sure you're not putting things that are hazardous to something that lives in that environment. So there are more regulations, and the regulations are stricter on wastewater than than on the drinking water and what you drink. So we're very concerned about that too. We're not in the business of trying to contaminate anything. It's just not in our best interest that, things like that are expensive. And so even with building the plant, we really do want to try and be a good partner, as good as we can be, with the surrounding area, because complaints and anything that we did that would disturb it, those are expensive things for us to mitigate. When we have to pull staff off of other things to go investigate or to go and do, those are all expensive things. It's in our best interest to make this as unintrusive to the neighbors as what we possibly can.
Are there, we talked about reclaiming the water, are there gray water, is there gray water opportunity here?
There's reuse type 1 and type 2 reuse water here available. Yes, that somebody, if they were adjacent to that property, it would be pretty easy for us to be able to give them access to water. But on top of that, if you think about it, we're all going to be reusing all of our water at some point. I mean, it is the new gold out there. And I think we all really realized that when we were in those drought restrictions and worried about going to stage 3. We will be looking at every opportunity to reuse every drop of water that we have.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, I appreciate everybody's work on this. And again, just staying ahead of it, I think is great. And it's paramount to get I appreciate the folks that came here today to talk about it, because we want to get all the input we can. Thanks.
Lisa, before we take any other council comments, I was reminded that I think you're, maybe with Commissioner Jones and our staff, going to be hosting a public meeting coming up. And maybe we can put that on the record so that anybody that's tuning in later that's not in the audience will know there's one in February coming up, is that right?
We
Have we not
haven't
landed on a
determined the
date?
date yet.
Okay, well, we'll do our best to spread the word about that. And I know Commissioner Jones's office is going to spread the word about that as well. The intention is to have Lisa and team members available for a neighborhood meeting. Perhaps even more people can engage and directly engage in some Q&A with the staff in a setting that's more conversational than a council meeting, so.
Yeah, and some of the folks here were on the tour, so I kind of know them now. And so I know that they're going to be sending us a list of questions to help us for that presentation so that we're at least addressing what their concerns are and not just kind of circulating around with some information there. So I think that would be really, that's going to be really beneficial.
Well, let's as we get those questions and our responses to that, let's plan to circulate that to the council as well.
Okay.
So that they're seeing what community members are asking about and what the answers are. And so I think that just will help create transparency, two-way transparency that will be helpful.
I guess my only question, maybe there's more, depending on the answer, I don't know, I know one of the comments made by one of the visitors today was specific to the size of the land, the lot itself. I think it's 150 acres. Is that confirmed for this?
It's 147, and then we also bought the property owner's house because, as part of that
Yeah.
deal, so that was, I think, 5.14 acres.
Gotcha. So just a shade over. And is any of the intent behind buying such a large lot for this with the intention to have it be less imposing upon the direct neighbors so you can sort of hide or stash where that treatment plant is without having it be sort of right in their sight line?
Yeah, I think that having that much land, it does allow us to have more buffer, but it also allows us to be able to make the land look as close to what it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, my idea would be that it looks like a hayfield forever with maybe a farmhouse that's disguising a plant, you know, sitting back from there. So that somebody driving by, if they could see the plant, they wouldn't know that that's what they were looking at, other than the sign that we are required by TCEQ to put on the fence.
Yeah, that's great. That sounds awesome. I know, and I've talked with City Manager Ford about this for other things in the city, but there's an architectural firm out of Austin. I'm sure there's architectural firms elsewhere that specialize in not necessarily disguising, but beautifying wastewater treatment plants or other infrastructure items. And I'd be really interested, not necessarily with this particular firm, I have no ties to them, I just stumbled across them when looking at ways to make these things look a little more aesthetically appealing. As we do have such a long runway, to make sure that we're exercising all of those options as well in terms of making what we're putting in this area where these residents very clearly care and have vested interests in maintaining their sense of home and peace, making sure that we do everything we can to keep the area as uninterrupted as possible with what we do there. So I appreciate your sincerity and your thoughtfulness in explaining this, and I believe we have a commitment to making sure that's the case, and I just want people, the guests here today, to hear that as well, and welcome and open to any comments you guys have moving on a go-forward basis as we roll this out. So thank you.
I just want to say, I was on the council when we had the other treatment plant, and we had just as much opposition, if not more, from the neighbors. They did not want that plant there. We went ahead and did it because we felt, those of us that were on the council felt like that was the best thing for that area and what we needed to do to protect the river. So we went ahead and did it. And so it looks like it turned out well. Staff, and probably you, Lisa, made sure that the concerns of the residents that lived in that area, they were addressed, and the concerns of the council, that we would not do anything to hurt our river. We would never do that. We know how important the Brazos River is to the city of Waco and McLennan County and all of Texas. So we would not hurt it. We made sure that that didn't happen. So I'm looking to see that the same thing happens if we decide to go ahead with this treatment plant in Golson, whether we do it there or any other place. I know that staff who live here in Waco and McLennan County as well want to protect our river. So please, if nothing else, when you leave this meeting, know no city council, no city staff would endanger our river in any way. Thank you for your presentation, Lisa. I wrote a lot of notes down so that later on, if I'm hit with questions, I have them here. So
I would
anyway.
say that with the Bullhide Creek, because we are in the process of expanding that plant, we've met with the constituents right around us several times, and right now we're trying to get another meeting, and we can't get them to respond. So I'm thinking their concerns, we've addressed most of them. And, I mean, we've been working and communicating with them every step of the way, and I don't think that staff would be any different in this. I know that as they said, it was a shock, but I think as we move forward, I mean, we'll try and communicate every step of the way that we can on things that we know that they're interested in. And that's about as good of a promise as I can make.
Thank you for that, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa, for the presentation. We spent a couple of times now addressing necessary evils, if we're going to put them in a title, with electricity, with water, with how we move and continue to grow our communities. I asked Assistant City Manager Kane for a map of where the wastewater treatment plants were, because I'm like, okay, so if we're looking at how our community will grow, because it is growing and will continue to grow. So how, where is that happening? And I looked, and it's all around. The ones that we have, of course, Central is the biggest and does the lion's share of the work. But they're at northeast and west points, I guess you would say that. Yeah, that's the way the map goes. Even Waco maps. So, and I'm looking at it, and I on surface, I understand the concerns of Chalk Bluff residents because the area of growth is not their area. So I get it. It's not. However, we can't function in a city mind. We don't have the privilege of functioning in a solely city mind. We have to think metro. We have to think regional, if you will, for our areas because all of them affect one another. I do have a question because I am not an engineer. Tell me how it is easier to funnel waste upstream?
You're talking about going under the
Yeah.
river? I am also not an engineer, so I just know it works. I mean,
Okay.
it's kind of like siphoning gas.
Yeah,
Once it gets going, it'll go.
okay. And the double.
I don't know. I don't know if somebody has a better explanation. Amy's here. She's an engineer, but I know that it works. We have several wastewater lines that are in the Brazos River.
Yeah.
Including the most recent going to transfer lift station where we have a siphon there. And so we do it all over town because we have, the city is not just where the lake is. We have rivers too. And so we have to get our services, both water and wastewater.
That's already in existence, like right this minute. Okay. And the double piping, because we understand that our people, number one, are our greatest asset, but our natural resources are number two. And if we compromise either, we're a detriment to ourselves. So with the knowledge that I wouldn't cut off my nose to spite my face, we've done this and done it successfully.
Yeah, and And we're not going into the riverbed. We're going to go down into the rock bed underneath the river. So that's the other thing. But we do double pipe things frequently in waterways. And if you look around town, you'll notice that wastewater lines almost typically follow a creek or a river, or, I mean, we're looking for low points. So that's part of the reason why you're always by a waterway for these types of things.
So, and you mentioned that then there is a wetlands that is created. I spent 13 and a half years in the Houston area, and I know that there were a lot of reservoirs around the areas that I live, and I found that they were also some were connected to treatment plants. Is that the same?
Yeah, I mean, for Bullhide, it was called a bonus feature in our permit. It's not really called a wetlands, but if you went out there, that's what you would think it is. You know, we have beaver out there that kind of change the path of the water, the way the water is supposed to go, but we have all sorts of birds out there and things like that. So it is, you know, it's just, there's a low-lying area, and it made sense to go ahead and polish the water, as they like to call it.
And I'm sorry, I have lots of questions. You mentioned the biological odor control advancement in technologies. Has that been, so this one would, you know, or the last one that was built certainly had that, this one would have that. Have the others been upgraded with said systems?
No, you know, it's much like a house.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier sometimes to build things from the
Sure,
ground
sure,
up
sure,
than
sure.
it is to retrofit things. So Central Plant definitely doesn't have it. Bullhide really doesn't have much odor. I mean, it just doesn't. And then, but Transfer Lift Station, which is right there, like I said, by Baylor's Tennis Center, the old one was really not a pleasant place to be and had a lot of odor. That biological odor thing has
Changed again?
there's just no odor.
And I mean, in that.
We're talking about having a cookout out there. I mean, there's no odor.
And that one's how old, right?
I think we finished that 3 years ago, maybe.
Okay. All right. And I'm just going to address, I saw some faces made when you said it was Baylor. Just because it's Baylor doesn't mean that it's going to be treated any different than what we do anywhere.
No, there was a development across the street that they're talking about on the other side of the river that's been discussed for a long time. There was that concern. But it was really just, we wanted to not have that odor. And so anything that I think we build, going forward, we're looking for what is the best practice right now.
And my last couple of two, I promise, Mayor. You said that depending on the growth patterns of China Spring is how the time frame could shift. Is that right? As a whole, and this may be a Bradley question, as we're looking at growth trajectories for our communities, are there any other areas that are on a high growth path? Or because I know use your maps, Andrea, southwest-ish, that area is already covered by, that's Bullhide's area, right?
Are you talking about Highway 84? Or are you talking about, okay, so Highway 84, we're wrapping up, well, 2 major projects out there. We're on the 3rd one right now. We've spent about $22 million right now to extend the life of what we have out there as well. And so, but we do have, and we've made the announcement, so I guess I'm free to say it, but you know, right there where the landfill is, but the property right next to it, I mean, we've already looked at, there's a parcel there that we're going to use for a future wastewater treatment plant as well.
So we're eagerly anticipating what growth is for our entire city and looking to make sure that as we plan, we are doing that intentionally and strategically.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My last question, what are the Flat Rock dates?
I'm sorry,
The
what is
dates?
it?
Flat Rock?
Flat Rock Road. So we had, we knew we had a lift station that was under capacity. We had some lines that were under capacity. They were just, I say under capacity, they're too small. And the growth out there have been some lines where you have a 16 feeding into a 12 that's feeding into an 8. So we've been doing a lot of this, let's correct this and get it to the right size. So this is just another piece of that will put it the right size, but it will also allow us to have some additional capacity in the lines out there.
So you can think of Flat Rock and the work that Lisa's referring to on the 84 corridor as interim strategies.
Got it.
And those, in both situations, were meant to buy us, we think, 3 to 10 years. In the case of China Springs, it's longer. It's closer to 10. But those interim strategies allow us to put off the real heavy investment of a new wastewater treatment plant. Because, give me in current dollars, how much are we at?
55 million?
Yeah. And so in 10 years,
60 million?
we'll be pushing a $100 million investment probably.
Sure, okay.
And when we're talking plants too, we're not just talking about plants. There's usually some lines that have to be done, some lift stations that have to be done. So that's the plant cost. That's not all that other stuff that may have to happen as well. So it's an expensive proposition.
My council members have already made this point that we don't take any of this work lightly. Because all of us are affected by these things. I think you've said a whole bunch of stuff, but I think what resonates with me more is that wastewater restrictions are stricter than drinking water restrictions. And that blows my mind, but it is. And I think that we would do ourselves a disservice to put anyone, including our residents that do not live in Waco proper, in danger. Because the work that you live, work, and play within the city limits. So even though you're not ours, you're ours. I understand the concerns. I grew up in Chalk Bluff. I'm a Conley graduate. And I understand the concerns, but I also know that the work that has been done in the past, in our council's past, has been done with our whole community in mind, and that is in and outside of our city limits, because again, we serve as the hub and the heart of the county. So I am trusting that we will continue to put our best efforts for our communities. I am trusting that we have taken the concerns, because you all are right to have your concerns. This is a big, scary thing, and it is not to be dismissed, right? But it is also I want you to walk away with some understanding that everybody who is at this dais in that department is thinking about you. And thinking about what was the thing, 20,000 at best acres of other people that we will all have to make plans for. Because the fact of the matter is we're all gonna have to use water and wastewater every day. And there has to be a way to do that that keeps us safe, that keeps our rivers safe, that keeps our property safe, but accommodates the growth of our community. And if that's what you're standing flat-footed on, okay.
So just a reminder, we are the regional provider for this area. It's not just Waco's waste that we treat. We treat every city around us.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor and Council, if I might add, Paul Kane here in the back. Sorry.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Probably wondered where the voice was coming from.
Where's that coming from?
Sorry about that. One of the things that was mentioned by one of the citizens was the idea that developers should be paying their cost or paying for these kinds of improvements. And I just would add that a few years ago, the council made a strategic and equity-based decision to start passing on those costs for infrastructure to developers, and that's through our impact fee process. And so you'll see as we move forward in this planning process that we'll begin to assign some of these large capital items like plants to our impact fees, and those will start being reflected in new development as it occurs. So the idea is that up to the limits that the state allows us to, the cost for this improvement will be paid for the new development in the area and not by the ratepayers today. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing, and just to emphasize again, and you'll be hearing more about this in the next month or so as we talk about water use and availability in the future. This water will go into the Lake Brazos. And back in 1914, the first water treatment plant was built next to the river because that's where the water came from. And we're going to start taking water out of the Brazos again. We've talked about Lake Waco and the limitations there, and so we plan to start treating water out of the Brazos and getting that to our citizens and customers around the city and, and surrounding areas. So what we put into the river from this plant is vitally important to us because we're going to take it out a few miles downstream, treat it, and pump it back to our citizens and customers. So we completely agree about how important this is in terms of water quality and protecting the environment. We know that we'll be drinking that water eventually, and so we want to make sure, certainly the government, the federal government, state government will require us to do that, but we want to do it because it lowers our risk and cost and everything else to make sure that the water that we put into the Brazos upstream is high quality water so that when we treat it later, we're able to do so in a cost-effective way and in a way that protects citizens who drink it. So just make those 2 points, reemphasize that last one. Thank you.
That mysterious man in the back sounds reasonable.
I'll just wrap up. I think most of the questions that I had written down have been asked by my colleagues. The people, folks who came here to speak today, I'll echo my council members and say how much I sincerely appreciate you being here. I also grew up outside of a city. I grew up on a farm, and if I had heard that this would be occurring near my family's land, I would be here as well. And my hope is that after today and as we go forward together in partnership, we really can work together to bring knowledge to the situation and peace, because I do believe, based on my understanding of how this can end, is that it will be just fine and really land in a place that is not disruptive to concerned neighbors. And that is the goal that I think that we all have here today. A couple questions that I'm not sure if they did get answered, I missed it. So we're holding all of the land around there in conservation. There's not a plan nor will there be a plan to do high density development on that land, correct?
Correct. Our plan at this, as it stands at this moment, would be for it to continue to be what it is now, a hayfield.
Can be written into agreements, as you said, City Manager Ford, right?
I think any and all of the commitments that you're hearing today should be written in agreements. The only caveat that I think Lisa makes that's well made is there are situations where things are going to get better than what we know today based on technology change. So yes, I think the conservation of the remaining property should be an item that's documented in an agreement.
I've also, I'm sure all of us have, but been to Bullhide. I've been to Bullhide and think that it really is it really does exceed expectation for how a wastewater treatment facility can be both small in footprint, not have odor, and generate clean effluent. So one question I had, and I don't know if you don't have an answer to this, Lisa, that's fine, but how does the water that is being generated out of Bullhide or W. Mars compare to the water quality that's currently in the Brazos River? Is it cleaner, the same?
It's better.
So cleaner in substance than, yep.
Yeah, and pretty much if we were to put disinfection chemicals into the water and filter it, it's pretty much drinkable at that point. So,
Lisa, recently there was an effort to kind of deregulate the upstream Bosque County dairy runoff by the Texas legislature. Didn't go through. Would you say the runoff from those dairy farms would be less clean or more than what comes out of Bullhide?
it's less clean than what comes out of Bullhide.
For sure.
I mean, just, yeah, we're regulated. We can only release, certain levels of like phosphorus back into the system, whereas the dairies have basically unlimited.
I think that's even, that's incomparable. That is like, this is like basically near potable water being
Right.
put into the river. And what I'm hearing Elisa say is that it's cleaner than the existing river water. And so I guess the question that I would be asking as a resident is what could go wrong? I mean, we have checks and balances, and I guess the wetlands is one check on that, but is there any track record of W. Mars or Bullhide creating a situation that would, I mean, I'm not aware of anything.
Bullhide, no. During the high rain events that we had back in 15, 16, probably there were a few instances at Central Plant because we didn't have transfer lift station built yet. So now that we have transfer lift station built, but having said that, the Brazos River was also flowing at I don't know what rate, and it's just at those times it is. It can be a challenge to operate that size of a wastewater treatment plant, especially if you don't have sufficient wet weather storage capacity.
Yeah.
So adding in transfer pretty much solved that problem for a while for us, at least.
I think that it'll be important for residents to know the checks that we have in place, because it's easy to go to Bullhide or W. Mars and see the water flowing into the river and be like, this is clean. And it's easy to walk around Bullhide and say, this does not produce an odor. This is not going to impact my property value. This is not going to impact my quality of life. You can go pick up the water with your hands that's at the end of the wetlands and see like, this is clean. I guess the fear would be, hey, what are the checks that this is how this functions? And I think that as we go, I mean, we're potentially 10 years away,
Right.
potentially more than 10 years away from this, and technology is being developed all the time. So as this gets developed, I think that it's just going to be something that I would ask staff to do is walk with the residents to say, we're going to have checks in place to make sure that there isn't some failure that results in
No, and with Bullhide, there is that berm around the whole property, which also helps. That's not why it's there, but it does help.
Yeah.
The other thing is that all our plants are 24/7. So even though there's not a person manned at Bullhide, there is people at Central Plant monitoring any alarm, anything. We always have alarms on everything that if something was to fail, somebody is out there to
Awesome.
go check on it. So.
it's great. Want to be discharged. Yep. That, I believe, I'm looking over my questions and I'm seeing that they've already all been asked. So with that is, I look forward to moving forward with this, look forward to continuing to work with the residents to make sure we have clarity in answers given. Again, as has been stated by our council, the good news, I believe, is that we have a track record of having water treatment facilities that do not cause a problem to neighbors, as evidenced by the neighbors of Bullhide, that produce no odor, that produces clean water being put back into the system. And we can point to that and say that we do take this seriously. We have a track record of doing that, and we'll continue to have a track record of doing that as we move forward. And we'll, again, ensure that we work with the residents to strike this balance. I don't love the idea of building another wastewater treatment facility, but we have to because we've got a plan for growth. And we're trying to do that in a thoughtful, mindful way and believe that we can hit that right balance. So appreciate staff's dedication to hitting that balance. I appreciate all the work that's been done and look forward to moving forward with our residents.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Lisa. Bradley, we'll turn it back over to you because I don't believe you completed your report. I don't know if you have one to give.
I do have one to give. I'm going to continue through the work sessions, though, just to make sure we can meet the timing I need to meet.
That's
and
great.
Then if we have time at the end, I'll highlight a couple of great resolutions.
Agenda items, great.
So I'm going to call on Clint Peters, our Director of Development Services, for work session 004, discussion of the Development Process Review Project. During the past year, Clint's team primarily, but also supported by other departments, have made improvements in how we deliver development services to our community, such as greatly enhancing communication with the development community, offering third-party inspections for larger projects, as well as implementing video inspections and new technologies for re-inspections. But even still, we know that we can strengthen our service delivery through a model of continuous improvement. So Clint and Deidre and others have begun a process to review our overall development review process. A lot of process words in my intro. Sorry about that. This effort is going to touch multiple departments, but I've asked Clint here to kind of give us an update kind of as the leader of the overall project and give the council some perspective on where we're headed over the next few months. Clint?
Thank you, Bradley, Mayor, City Council. I did want to give you an overview of this project. This is, as Bradley mentioned, we have been working with our development partners to improve not only the process but communication with them. And through that, we've continued monthly development meetings, but we've also added some quarterly meetings with our Home Builders Association and then some of our other partners. And one of the things we've talked about is really needing maybe have a outside look at our process to give some input to it, do stakeholder meetings, interviews, surveys, and then come back with some recommendations on how to improve our processes. And so what I wanted to do was go through just the project team that's going to help us with this, the purpose of the project, and then the timeline and next steps. And this is a quick process. We're only looking about 3 months to go through this and get a final report back to the council. So we have contracted with MGT Consulting. They are a global firm that helps in lots of different ways, consulting with cities. Our project lead is Bruce Cowens. He has over 35 years of experience and has had clients in pretty major cities: Houston, Tampa, Atlanta, Nashville, and many more. And reviewing very similar to what we're doing with this project and their development process and making recommendation. He's also served on a city council, so he has that perspective from a policymaker, elected official, priorities of those, and then understanding what development communities want from their cities as far as functioning. And then we also have, the city also has experience with MGT, as they were the lead consultant on the Waco disparity study. So the project purpose, it's broken up into really 3 main areas. Is collect survey data from our stakeholders. Right now, we're working through that process with them. They've collected a lot of permitting data, and then they're working on putting the questions together for both surveys that will go out to a larger group area, and then working with in-person interviews with major stakeholders. Evaluating all the applications and permit approval processes through not only the Development Services Department, but also our Public Works and Utilities and Health Departments. And then establishing customer-focused improvement goals and action items based on that information that's been provided through those surveys. Also looking at our work staff to see if we have the right mix of full-time staff versus outside resources. As Bradley mentioned, we have brought on a third-party inspection company, Bureau Veritas, that has helped us tremendously over the past 6 months, filling in when we have a backlog of work that needs to happen, and then larger projects. And then as we move forward, identifying key performance indicators and data that can be managed and over time to make sure we're meeting the goals that are brought forward with this study. So this is their work plan, GT's work plan. That red area is currently where we are. We're gearing up for the survey, the stakeholder meetings, and providing the survey. We've done a lot of work with the data, but a majority of their time, more than half their time, will be doing surveys and stakeholder interviews of the project. And you can see this is a pretty short period of 3 months, so a lot of the work will be happening in the next couple of months. Stakeholder groups that we're engaging with, city development staff, and that includes not only Development Services Department, Public Works, Utilities, Fire Department, Health Department, all the departments that have interaction with the development process. Our city council and management will have some interviews with some of you and the city manager's office. And then our outside stakeholders, developers, engineers and architects, Central Association of General Contractors and their trade contractors, electrical, HVAC contractors, our Heart of Texas Builders Association, and real estate professionals. We did, I believe we've narrowed down some dates. Consultants will be in town the first week in February, and so we'll start those interviews then. The goal is to have the most of that work, survey work, done in February and into March, and have an initial findings and draft report in March, with the final report in April through this process. So pretty quick process, and then we'll bring back the findings of that work session to you in April. And I'll open it up to any questions or comments.
I really appreciate, sorry, I'm jumping in here, so I'm so excited about it.
Go ahead, lead on where you're at.
Break up the monotony and go first. Right. So thank you, Clint. This is to help us streamline this process, right? This is to hear from all the people who will be involved in development and future growth for our city, so that we can hear from them in a way. Is this going to change perhaps how the timeliness of how our processes go once we hear from them?
Yes, that will be one of the things that will be studied, is timeliness, how long it takes to process permits, ways to improve that processes, whether it be technology or the process itself. But I think before we get into that, we really need to hear from our stakeholders about what their concerns or perceived concerns are with that process. We think we know from just hearing in the meetings on that, but really have somebody from the outside look at it, talk to them, talk to our staff. We'll have they'll interview from the permit staff, the front desk staff, all the way up to our plan reviewers, to inspectors, to supervisors, all the way up through the organizations. They really get a full understanding of how we do things, where the rooms for improvements are, looking at other cities, for benchmarking and best practices, and doing that comparison across the board that we really can't do in the timeline that it needs to be looked at while we're still doing the actual work.
Yeah.
So having that outside agency is going to be good in that.
This is super exciting to me, because I think that, the only way we can be better is to, really look at our processes. And, if you hear one complaint, it's that how long it takes to build something in Waco, Texas. And I don't have a counter argument for that, but I think that this will allow us to really understand what the processes are, and hearing from those who are involved in said development from the other side is the only way that I know of that we can be better, and our processes can be as cutting edge and up to date as they should be, in compared to our peer cities, our peer plus cities, I'll always say, because we play up. And so I think that this is great, and I look forward to, what'd you say? What was the time? Go back to
April is our goal to have the final report.
2024.
Thank you.
Am I supposed to go now? Saw out of kilter.
We're all waiting.
We're all waiting for it. Hey, I appreciate this, Clint. And this is great. As a private sector operations guy for like 30 years, it's about product, people, and process. And I think the product that we have at the City of Waco is, just, we want to have the best customer service we could possibly have. And I think that's the goal of this council and this staff and the city manager and you, Clint, and all the management that sits across the end of the room back there. We want to have great customer service in the City of Waco. And I think this is looking inward and looking at our processes and systems. And I think you'll see almost every council meeting, at least every other council meeting, there's something about we're either buying a new system, perfecting a new computer system or a software system, or reflecting on our processes, because we want to get better. We want to be best in class on customer service. So this process, I'm glad that it's coming in your department, Clint, because you're well regarded in the community. You listen, you implement, and I'm really looking forward to April and May when we can kind of take a look back, because I think KPIs are so important where we can, the key performance indicators, not only in the permit approval process, which I guess that's the first guinea pig that we're going to kind of look at here. There's so many moving parts, as you pointed out. I didn't realize it touched all these different, on page 16, all the different stakeholder groups. But, it does. So as Councilmember Bearfield said, I mean, that's one that, as council members hear about, it takes a while to do the permitting, but some of it may be very logical, some of it may be, but at least we'll be able to measure it now, I think, and getting an external team, this MGT team in to kind of help us, I think makes a lot of sense. So to me, this is all about excellent customer service, which is what I think we're trying to give every resident and citizen of Waco. So I applaud staff for launching this project.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm excited for this. I think that this is going to be really met with some relief in the the builder community, just to be able to have a voice and speak into the process. And I personally know many people that are staff members of the Development Services Department who are really hardworking, great guys you want on your team, staff members, and I'm really thankful for their dedication. But I think just kind of a really good, solid look at where can we improve, what are we getting right, what can we do better is just healthy. And think that it's going to, like Jim said, really allow us to provide excellent customer service. And one way I think about this is economic development, because when there is an ability for development to occur in a seamless, efficient, as we want to have safe buildings, but to the extent that we can, I'm sure that there's a reduction in cost to the construction of those buildings. When right, it's going to be better for the economy. So I'm looking forward to this as well, and really hope to be able to move forward and get some great results. So thanks for moving forward with this, Clinton, Deidre, and Bradley.
Thanks, Mayor. One message for the employees, you mentioned them, and they're a key part of the mix here. Clint has them on the slide. We're going to talk to them too and see what pain points they have, because that they're pretty close to the ground. They're going to hear, or they're going to know things to improve as well. But a message that I wanted to give the employees, and I know Clint has as well, is that we as an organization are developing a culture where we want to review processes and improve them continuously. We want to develop a muscle that makes things better so we can achieve that goal that the council set for us of becoming a high-performing organization. We did this in communications a couple years ago. We did it in human resources not long ago. And I think there's other processes and departments where we'll continue to use this approach to take a moment, stop cutting at the tree, and sharpen your axe, as Paul's favorite president was prone to saying, I think. Is that right, Paul, President Lincoln?
Is that Washington?
Yeah.
That's close enough, sir.
Well, I think that's actually his second favorite president, but anyway, that's the only, that was the only inaccurate part of the quote. But it's good and healthy to take a moment and better ourselves, and it doesn't mean we're terrible at it. It just is a recognition of we've been doing it the same way, and let's take a minute to look and see how we can do it better. And so appreciate the council's funding of these types of things. And the message to the employees is we're going to get better, but we're also not terrible. So let's work through it in that light and work together to create a great study and implement a great study. So Clint, thanks for your leadership on this. I know there'll be other directors and members of the leadership team behind you and with you on it, and appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got work session 004, a discussion of an update on the current and future implementation of the strategic housing plan. Council will recall back in January, it's been 2 years now. Wow. 2 years now, the housing and community development staff came and presented the housing strategic plan. And there were 4 key strategies from that plan, and then task forces and task groups formed that included both staff from the city as well as community stakeholders to really dive in deeper to the 4 areas and encourage creativity of thought on how we would move forward as a community to implement the strategic plan. Today we're getting another interim update, I would call it, from Galen Price, our director, as well as Josh Caballero, relatively new member to our housing team. And they're going to present an update on the progress being made by the task force, as well as a look ahead at next steps as it relates to the housing strategic plan. Galen?
Great. Thank you, Bradley. And thank you, Council, for the opportunity to present this exciting work that we've been doing over the last couple of years in regards to housing. As Bradley mentioned, Josh and I will be giving you a review of the strategic housing plan, in addition to giving you an update on the work that the task force groups have done to date and some of the future work that is being planned. The strategic housing plan was developed over the course of a year by M&L Associates, and the study was to look at housing from a holistic view. The topics that looked at included affordability, market rates, market types and demands, in addition to issues that were related to housing, specifically that we're facing here in Waco. And so out of the study came more than 15 strategies that were recommended, which were categorized into 4 main categories, which would be the supply category, the stability category, the subsidy category, as well as administrative categories. And subsequent follow-up discussions led to the creation of 4 task groups to focus on specific aspects of the strategies of some of the strategies identified in the plan. Each task group was developed to look at model programs in other cities centered around a specific topic and review these in context to how our community operates, with the goal of potentially implementing these strategies in a way that works for our Waco community. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Josh, and he's going to discuss the vacancy task group.
Thank you, Galen. So as Galen mentioned, I'll be talking about the work of the vacancy task group and the density task group with you today. The vacancy task group, as you might recall from the strategic housing plan, there were several recommendations made to address vacancy. One of them was to create a vacancy database here of vacant property in Waco. And so one of the things that our task group determined was that before we could move forward or really consider any other recommendations brought forth in the strategic housing plan, we had to have a better understanding of what vacancy looked like in Waco. And so therefore, utilizing best practices from multiple cities across the country, we created a process to identify vacant properties in North, East, and South Waco. Now, while West Waco does not have, or certainly does have vacant properties, it was not included in this survey or in this process because that is where development is occurring rapidly, more rapidly than in other areas naturally. So with that process that was carried out we were able to partner with Baylor and utilize students from a Poverty in Waco course, interns from the Baylor's Office of Engaged Learning, as well as our community engagement team in order to conduct these surveys of properties. Now, as we did these surveys, we documented observations of the property, assessed really what we were seeing, and were able to upload that information into a database.
We then were able to cross-reference that with publicly available data sources such as our red and green tag list, with to document to see what properties owed taxes, and also information from a CAD. In addition, once that was done, we were able to analyze the information in order to really begin to understand it a little better. Now, I apologize for the view up there, but a couple of things that I want to say. So once that process took place, we identified 2,286 possible vacancies in Waco, in northeast and south neighborhoods. Once we cross-referenced that data and began to look at it closely, we determined that there were about 1,969 reasonably certain vacant properties. Now, how that was determined was we were able to look at a number of different indicators, such as what we observed, so if it looked abandoned, if there was structural damage present, if there was an overgrown lawn, but also looking at the publicly available data as well to easily identify what was really going on with this property. So as an example, we had certain properties that were listed as for sale or for rent, and because this was a point of time assessment, we did not include those in the reasonably certain properties because we weren't sure how that might change over a period of time. In addition, we also, there was a property, for example, that we observed and identified as vacant, and then when we went to MCAD information, it was listed as owner occupied. There were several properties like that, and so we did not include that in our reasonably certain T-scale, or in our reasonably certain number. So once those indicators, they were assigned a point value, and the 1969 here are what scored higher on that evaluation, and we felt were reasonably certain. The other thing I will say and mention, because I did mention that one example of a property that was, it had structural damage, it appeared to be abandoned, but was identified as owner occupied in MCAD. That is an example of a property that we put on a separate list so that we can follow up with later for rehab. So you'll see here that our reasonably certain number and the estimate from the 5,000, which was 5,000 properties from the Strategic Housing Report, are pretty significantly different. And so we think there are a few things that could lend to that discrepancy that we see here. One, we were using volunteers, students, so there is a matter of human error that's involved with this. It is an inexact science as we are observing and attempting to identify. But a couple other things is we also only surveyed 18 out of the 27 neighborhoods. And then one thing that I do want to point out is that the 5,000 estimate is from the housing report is actually utilizing American Community Survey data from 2019. And one thing that I think is relevant in that is that there have been 2,849 permits issued since then for single-family dwellings. And so I think all of those factors combined help explain the discrepancy that we see here. Now, speaking of certainty, this map indicates what we were able to identify, the properties and where they are within Waco. So you'll see here the red dots are those that we assign the value of reasonably certain to, and the blue dots are those that scored lower on that evaluation but wanted to include them here so you can see where those were. A few key findings that we wanted to be sure to point out to you. So one, you'll see there the total value of the properties is $102,347,223. That is out of those that we labeled as reasonably certain, so that's the 1969 number. And then you'll see there the average property value of vacant structures, which is the majority of that value, is $116,478. That is accounting for 808 vacant structures.
which totals to about 94, just over 94 million. And so you'll see that the majority of that value is in structures, and then the remaining value is from vacant lots that were identified in the process. The other thing that I do want to point out from this slide is you'll see here the average time on the market. And so when we are talking about vacant property, you'll see that for vacant structures, they remain vacant on an average of just over 5 years, and lots are around 7.5 years on average. And so the majority of these properties are not only vacant, they are vacant for quite some time in our community. So what does this mean moving forward? So one, we do want to continue moving forward with the release of city-owned lots through our vacant property plan for development. That is continuing to occur as those RFPs happen. Another thing is, this was a long, time-consuming, tedious process identifying these vacant properties, but we do believe that it is very important moving forward. And so we want to be able to identify or continue to identify and measure vacant properties. We are working with our IT department to make this process easier and thinking about what that might look like in the future. In addition, you'll see here, now that we have a better understanding of vacancy in Waco and really where those properties are within our community, the task group is going to begin looking at some of the other recommendations that came out of the strategic housing plan, including the creation of vacant property registration ordinance, strategy for addressing current and future vacant lots, and the establishment of a land bank and community land trust. The reason I included a community land trust in here is we will talk about that in the work of another task group, but it is important to mention at this point in time because a land bank and community land trust often do work hand in hand together and how they tend to operate. Moving along, I want to discuss some of the work from our high-density task group.
Councilmember Rodriguez, I think, had a question.
I have a question. I've had some folks call me since we're talking about the vacancy. Bradley, are we selling those lots, the vacant ones, if someone has a vacant lot next to their home or in back or in front and they want to buy it? Are we doing that?
We,
Because I was told we weren't.
like a
We were not
remnant,
selling
I think we're
those
talking like a
lots.
remnant lot that's real narrow, or like if it's got,
You're talking about tax foreclosed?
we are processing lot sales to adjoining neighbors, either if Clint needs to come up, that's fine, but, or the, Galen, or, can you address that? But we are still processing those sales, correct?
Yes, that is correct. In addition to the vacant property plan that was developed, we are putting out sets of lots over, every three or so months, a set of lots that are available for individuals or entities to bid on as they're coming up.
Bid on?
Yes.
So if somebody calls and says, I want to buy that lot next door to, and I want to buy whatever is owed on it or whatever the price is, we go ahead and sell it to them? Or do we say, wait a minute,
Well,
it's got to be open for bid?
if it's a lot that is what we call substandard.
Right.
Meaning it's not buildable, it's less
Too
than
small to build.
50 foot wide, we do directly sell that to the adjoining property owner, the one you're referring to.
Yeah.
And those do end up on your agendas. If it's a buildable lot, it works its way through an auction process, Galen, is that?
Yes,
is that accurately said?
Yes, it goes through either the RFP or RFB process.
So now that opens up another question. Do we tell our residents, our constituents, or developers, whatever the case may be, we have so many properties in the city of Waco for sale?
Yes.
Do y'all want to bid on them? Or how do we do that?
We do that through a sign up through a vacant property being signed up through our list to receive the notification. In addition to, as our engagement team goes out, we make it known. when lots are available. And we reach out to developers that we've worked with in the past to let them know that lots are available. So we do a good job of communicating out when lots are available.
Okay, I was just wondering, because I've heard that we weren't selling our lots. And I said, I think you're wrong. Last I heard, we were selling our city-owned vacant lots.
We have a set of lots out currently for bid right now.
Okay, so as a council person, I didn't know we had one right now. Because, you know, we do get calls from our constituents. I always refer them to Bradley's office or city secretary's office because I don't know when we're selling them. So am I doing the right thing?
Yeah, I think send them over my way, and we'll make sure they're registered to get those emails when we do release a package. Because we are doing it differently. I do want to say that clearly. We are processing these differently. Galen's team is packaging them up geographically and packaging them as a group. And that, hopefully, with the strategies that the team has come with, will produce more houses being built on the lots. Because we got in this moment in time over the last few years where the auctions would occur and then it was mainly speculation, real estate speculation, meaning they'd buy it for a few $1,000s and wait a few years and then sell it for a higher price, but it didn't achieve the objective of adding a new housing unit.
Okay.
And so I think the strategy that's been deployed is more aimed at actually having a house built and occupied, so it'll solve the problem. But I'd say send folks over, Alice, Councilwoman, sorry.
That's okay.
And we'll get them, make sure they're registered on the email system so that they get an email right when those bid packages go out and they can go compete for those lots and get new houses built.
Okay, as long as it's a buildable lot, we will put them on the bidding process.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but that answered my question. I didn't want to continue the conversation and forget my question.
Thank you. So looking at the density task group, the density task group this year has really been focused on the accessory dwelling unit ordinance that was passed in November by council, hoping that this will help us achieve a different type of unit, that housing units available in our community. So the task group provided much needed important input into that process. We were also have been able to partner with TSTC. They have a course of students this semester who are going to be partnering with us and working to develop 5 pre-approved plans. So we have been able to send them information about what housing looks like in different areas of town, including information about we've included images of housing in different parts of town, as well as average lot sizes and the availability of alley access so that they can design the ADUs to match the parameters within the ordinance. Part of our goal is to really streamline this process in creating these pre-approved plans. We are also working with our Development Services Department to create technical assistance for the process as well. And so here you'll see an example of what we are hoping that can look like from what we received from TSTC students. There's an exterior image here. This is taken from the city of Clovis, California. They have had ADUs for quite some time. It's one of the cities that we spoke with. And one of the things that we heard out of a study from California was that there are 3 major barriers to folks being able to access and have an ADU. One of those was technical assistance, as I mentioned a moment ago. Another was just knowing where to begin and having that kind of pre-approved plan. And then in addition to that was financing options and what that might look like. And so you'll see here just some forthcoming work that we have. We are beginning Probably next month, we will launch our first awareness campaign and public education workshops. Those will occur at different areas around town, just to make sure that people are aware of the ADU ordinance, that it has passed, and what benefits it offers to them, as well as what resources will be available to them. In addition, we are exploring a grant within our department to assist low to moderate income residents in the development of an ADU. We're exploring several different options, but one option being considered at this time is to look at that based on a scoring criteria that might account for longevity in Waco, the ADU usage, as well as the use of local builders and contractors in the development of that process as well. At this point, I will turn it back over to Galen for the next task group.
So neighborhood revitalization is a unique group in and of itself. It's one of the unique groups because of the variety of needs that are identified when you start talking about neighborhood revitalization. Those needs consist of items such as housing, infrastructure, economic development, and social services. And not every area has the same set of needs. For example, the needs in East Waco may not be the same as the needs of South Waco and or North Waco. So in evaluating this, we felt it necessary to launch separate task groups for each area to allow the residents in their respective areas to focus on the specific needs of their respective area as they see them. So we engaged the community along with 35 community partner groups through these task groups to develop and establish priorities within each group. As part of this process, there were several concerns that came up within the task group meetings. Our community engagement team was able to establish a few key partnerships to address the community concerns that came up in these task group meetings. One of the items that came up was the ability to assist residents with applying for department programs via our application process. So what we did was we held train the trainer sessions with Highland Baptist Church as well as Grassroots for them to become a resource for residents who need assistance in the application process. Another initiative that came out of these groups occurred in South Waco, where a Fall into Action program led to the resolving of code compliance issues at 3 different properties and the cleanup of an additional property located in South Waco. Discussions have begun concerning a Spring into Action program to be held in North Waco. So in determining the neighborhood revitalization priorities, the neighborhood-specific task groups determined that a survey was needed to be conducted in order to receive more community input in establishing the specific priorities. So a survey was conducted in each area, and so we had a total of 398 respondents to the surveys. So using those survey results, each task group was able to identify the priorities for their specific area of town. So now we'll get into the Community Land Trust and Land Bank. Here you'll see a diagram that shows kind of how the Community Land Trust works, where the homeowner actually just owns the improvement and the land trust maintains the ownership of the ground. And so the land trust actually leases the ground through a ground lease to the homeowner. Community land trusts are private nonprofits that help provide affordable housing through the sale of the structures, and the properties are maintained ownership through the community land trust. Now, land banks, as Josh mentioned earlier, often work hand in hand with community land trusts, as land banks can often acquire properties entering the foreclosure process and work to clear titles and liens on the property before selling the property to the community land trust. The land trust at that point in time can rehabilitate the property, along with educating future home buyers before selling the home at a discounted rate to that homeowner. Because as I mentioned earlier, the homeowner is only paying for the actual improvement and leasing the land from the community land trust. A lot of land banks can increase their capacity and efficiency through working with the community land trust. So currently with the CLT, we are working on the logistics for a consultant site visit. The goal of the site visit with the consultant is to educate our community stakeholders on the community land trust model and process, and see if this is a feasible initiative to implement here in our city. And so with that, we will answer any other questions that you may have.
Questions?
Holmes here, just right quick, great presentation and great job. Josh, I like the data that you've got in this thing, and it's illuminates some of the issues that I've been trying to digest. I know that when we had M&L come through here last year, all right, it's 2 years ago now, that their analysis showed that we just had a shortfall in housing, you know, and I think they actually kind of threw it, I think it was 5,000 units, if I'm not, yeah, we had 50, we needed 50, but we only had something in the 40s. And so that 5,000, I guess when I saw that the 5,000 vacancy, I'm glad you screwed this down, Josh, to where it's really not 5,000, it's really more like 2,000, because in my mind I said all we need to do is build out the vacant properties that we already have and we'll solve the problem, or at least move toward the problem, move toward solving the problem. And so we still have 2,000 out there that that bothers me on how we can, what do we do about that? Because these are 2,000 vacant properties that have just gone through the hottest market in the history of Waco, but nothing's happened.
Right.
So I'm not sure, I'm looking forward to maybe getting some more ideas from y'all on how do we motivate those owners to, or incentivize those owners to get these things on the market and build out and help us solve the problem. I've got a lot of other questions. I'll follow up with y'all later on. But I like how we're bringing this issue about housing and affordable housing. We're putting some focus on it. And Gayla and Josh, I appreciate your work on this.
So my only quick question, thank you for the presentation. Do we have any idea how many of the percentage of the semi-available lots or structures, how many of them are their titles are tangled?
We don't, not an exact number. There's an estimate out there, right? But one of the things that I know we know is important is that is an issue in our community, and we do need to think about how that's getting addressed.
Yeah, I know we've there was a process in play, and then it kind of fizzled, and I know that there are others trying to find a way to do that, but I know that that has to be at the forefront of, or in the mind when we talk to the consultants, what other communities have done to assist with the untangling of titles, because if Granny owns this, but then, you know, the sister lives there, and then the kid, who does it belong to and how do we get it clear? Because we can't sell it until it's clear, or it can't be sold until it's cleared. And that's one of the things that I know education is going to have to be a huge part of that for our, not only for our citizens, but I mean for us in-house of how that works. Because if you're not thinking about it that way, it's oh, this is an easy transaction, but it's really not. So how the percentage of tangling, how we untangle, or what our role is in the untangling, and then if we have one, and then the education piece of now what. And I know that you all have been doing a very good job of getting in front of what resources the city has, and I hope they're being utilized more, and that the ambassadors are getting made every day so that we can continue to spread this gospel of, you know, hey, you can get your roof repaired, we can help you. Or, hey, you know, we've got some down payment assistance for you first-time home buyers. And because we want people to be homeowners. I mean, you know, it's however you rank what that is in the American dream, but the access to our community and that information is our responsibility. So I'm curious about where we fit into the tangled title of it all, but I'm very, very excited about the follow-up to this. I think that this is the only way that we're going to solve for those X's, is to look at it from a land banking perspective. I am so glad to see you all doing this. I know other communities that have done it and it's worked. And I mean, and it may not work for us, but we have to see, if we don't know, we don't know. So this is giving us an opportunity to look at it strategically and make informed decisions. So I'm appreciative. Thank you.
When Councilwoman Barefoot, I do appreciate those comments. I will say we have looked at other cities to see what their role is and what they have done, how looking at single title and addressing that. We've spoken with City of Dallas, who is taking on an initiative as an example. Those initiatives are pretty early on, and so we're still trying to see how some of that works. And even the City of Dallas hit the reset on their initiative. However, I will say, since you mentioned this, the land bank is also a strategy that we think is really helpful when it comes to single title, because they have the ability and some different tools to be able to do that a little easier and quicker.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The question regarding tangled titles was one of mine, so I appreciate you asking that, and appreciate your answers, guys. I want to first commend you, Josh, for your bravery of keeping the Cowboys lanyard today.
It was a tough
sticking
weekend.
with it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really showing out for the home team today. It's not easy to do.
He actually bought it on clearance.
Too soon, too soon.
So thank you for
I
that.
think I saw that too, Bradley. You buy a loaf of bread, you get it for free.
That might be mentioned.
I'd like to remind those on staff that we up here are elected officials and do not want to create anybody's scorn. So I will stop with the Cowboys comments there. However, thank you guys so much for this presentation. I know just through conversations, Josh, with you and your team, that the process of determining the houses that were vacant or that we can reasonably assume to be vacant was a very manual process and was not easily done. So thank you guys for your commitment to getting that data so you can provide it to us and give us a clear path forward, or a clearer path forward than what we were operating with. I really do appreciate that. I appreciate your guys' thought partnership on this and the creativity and looking at different ways that we can increase the available housing stock for Wacoans in our city. The question that I have is, Galen, you mentioned taking some time to determine the feasibility of implementing land bank and trust system in Waco. Do you know, do you have any reasonable expectation of that timeline to determine that, of when we will have an answer, yes or no, if this is something we can do or not do?
Yes, we're looking to have a consultant here in spring of this year.
Okay.
So they'll come in, they'll meet with our stakeholders, and in addition to that, they're looking at the feasibility of how that can currently work here in Waco. So we'll have an idea once we've had that discussion about feasibility and how, if it's something that we should pursue and how we should pursue it.
You imagine, would you say end of this year, top of next year, that we have that idea?
I honestly can't say right
I
now.
gotcha. Yeah.
It would really just be dependent on how in-depth that we're able to
And there's
study.
things we could uncover in the process that could make it take way longer. I get that.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Thanks, guys. That's all I had.
Thanks for this great presentation. Similar questions I had, and I think they've been answered. So looking forward to moving forward. This continues to be a pressing issue in our community, and know that working strategically on behalf of our residents is going to be important as we continue to grow and strive to have a financially secure community. So thanks for your work and efforts on this, and look forward to moving forward.
Galen, thank you also for and I forgot to mention, a lot of our folks are scared to buy a home because of their financial situation at home. So with these grants that you're talking about, we may be able to help some folks that maybe won't be so hesitant about coming forward to buy a home, because right now they're like, I know I'll never pass because my finances are not quite there. But if we can help, and I know that we have in the past, because I know some folks that we have helped and they still have their homes and are proud of their homes. So just continue on that a little bit more, maybe Galen, that our folks won't be so hesitant about trying to apply through our housing program, and let them know, hey, don't be ashamed of anything, just come on up and we'll try and help as much as we can, and if we can't, we can't, but we'll help who we can and when we can.
Yes, ma'am, we're committed to, as people apply, the majority of the people who actually come in are not ready today to purchase a home. And so we're committed to working with them to get them ready. We're committed to assisting them through the process, and all we ask is for them to have that same commitment for themselves as working through that process. And we work together, and we can help them become homeowners. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys. Bradley.
One more work session.
Okay.
Real brief, because I know you're hungry, I can tell. Last work session, Clint's going to take us like 5 minutes to work through a couple of the public hearings. I think there were a couple maybe that had some points he wanted to highlight in advance of this evening. Clint?
Yes, sir. So we do have 3 public hearings for planning this evening. I just want to highlight 2 of them. The first one is 2417 Wooded Acres Drive. This is a special permit for a short-term rental type 1. Type 1 is an STR that's either owner-occupied or has a designated operator on site when the guests are present. This is a 3-bedroom house along Wooded Acres between Bishop and Lakeshore Drive. And they would like to rent out 2 of the bedrooms. They do have the parking facilities on site that are needed. We did mail out 21 notices and had 5 returned in opposition from 4 different property owners. The 4 property owners do make up enough of the area within 200 feet to trigger the supermajority. So Plan Commission did recommend approval of this by a vote to 6-1, but the supermajority was triggered by the opposition that was received. So to approve this, council will need to have 5 out of 6 vote yes on that. And then our next public hearing is a special permit at 3828 Parkwood Drive. This is a special permit to extend hours of operations for a food truck at this location. In O3 zoning, the hours of operation are limited from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. by right. And then an applicant can request for extended hours up to midnight. And so they did request that to be open till midnight. If you remember, this food truck came to you in November as part of an appeal to a ordinance requirement for open air vending that they were not able to get all the property owners, residential property owners within 200 feet to sign off on it. And so they did request a variance from council that was granted in November. And now they're coming back to ask for extended hours. So this is the site here. The food truck is back in place. There were some requirements with the appeal on the variance to put some signage up to address some of the concerns from the neighbor. They actually did add some more fencing as well. Now they're coming back in and requesting the extra hours of service. We did get concerns from the same property owner about the hours of operation being proposed to that midnight. And they feel like Most of the negative impacts that happen at the food truck location happen after hours are 9 to 10. So they recommended that the permit be restricted to 9 or 10. And so Plan Commission did recommend approval of the extended hours, but just to 9 p.m. every night to allow them to stay open.
So Clint, real quick, by right, they can open until 7 at night.
Yep.
They requested
Till midnight.
to go to midnight
Yep.
on certain days a week. Plan Commission came back with 9 o'clock seems
9
kind
o'clock.
of reasonable.
That's
for them. Is
correct.
that right? Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
And staff had originally recommended 11, though.
So we recommend, for weeknights, we did recommend at 9 p.m. and then for
Friday and Saturday.
Friday, Saturday till 11.
But Plan Commission is the 9 o'clock standard, okay?
Yep. And that's it.
Thanks, Glenn.
Sure.
Bradley, are there any other items?
No, sir.
Are there any requests for future agenda items? If not, we will recess the work session and reconvene for regular session, regular session for executive session as read into the record by the city secretary at 5:17 p.m.
Notice is hereby given that the city council will go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. Attorney briefing, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071, litigation regarding possible use of per- and polyfluoroalkyl substance in foams at airports. Rules property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072, and economic development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. We are now in executive session.